Hi everybody, welcome to the first episode of the Teesside Business Podcast, the business podcast where we promote and highlight businesses within Teesside. With our first episode, we have Dave Roberts. Dave is the owner and managing director of Xcel and also the brains and owner behind Red Army TV. Hi Dave, how are you doing?
Mike, how are you?
Not so bad, buddy.
Cool.
For everybody who may not be aware of Red Army TV and Xcel, can you give us a bit of a rundown of each of what the companies do?
Yeah, Xcel was here first. It was formed in 2002. It's basically a broadcast, or it started out as a broadcast production company. It's now diversified slightly. So, yes, we still provide services for the likes of ESPN, Fox, all your big broadcasters, Eurosport around the world. But we've also now, we've since I moved back, obviously I was working for Fox as vice president out in Singapore. When I moved back to Teesside 4 years ago, I wanted to expand Xcel. So we've expanded into the corporate world as well. So we'll do a lot of video production, whether that's for social media, whether that's for videos for clients' websites, TV commercials. We produce training videos, all that kind of thing. So that's what Xcel does, or Xcel Broadcasting. It's full Monty. And one thing that happened 3 years ago, I'm lying there in bed and I'm a mad Borough fan. And I know my office is full of TV equipment. And I just thought, wouldn't it be nice if the fans had their own TV channel? So that's exactly what we did. I put it off for a while because I thought, I don't know whose shoulders this is going to land on to sort out. And it did for the first 2 years. But we've now got a bunch of volunteers. And it's a fantastic story, social story. We have everybody who's involved, including myself, are volunteers. Nobody gets paid for doing anything. We all work our fingers to the bone because of our love for Middlesbrough Football Club. And Xcel, thankfully, has the equipment. I have the expertise to provide the training and the guidance and the development for everybody. So we have people from all walks of life who are mad keen Borough fans and want to get involved in making a TV show. And the TV show goes out once a week.
Oh, fantastic. So starting with Xcel, you mentioned that you used to work for Fox and out in Singapore.
Yeah.
How did you go from starting working with Fox and obviously being creative director over there to moving into doing ESPN? Not ESPN, sorry, but Xcel.
Xcel's been, well, prior to... It's all to do with my business career history. A long time ago, I was a freelance broadcaster. I was a radio presenter, became a TV presenter, and because of that, formed a production company, a very small production company, which just used to be me.
Yeah.
And then that company sort of built year after year, very slowly, very gradually. But then at a certain point in time, I started working for Sky Sports. Mm-hmm. So I opened up the Sky Sports North East Bureau when Sky Sports launched in 1998, or Sky Sports News launched in 1998. So I became full-time employed. So Xcel sort of just looked after itself when phone calls came in, so I wasn't growing it. And it's been like that for a chunk of time, which included me going to work for ESPN out in Singapore, in America. By this time, I'm presenting TV programs and yes, thankfully being paid a lot of money to do it. And ultimately, in 4 years ago, I finished with Fox. I was vice president of the business development and production units and came home and took the golden handshake, came home, and I thought, well, Xcel now is the baby I'm going to grow and I'm going to build, and ramped it up. So we became a lot more proactive. We went out in search of contracts and work, and we've got some big clients, some impressive clients, and at the moment we have some pitches, some tenders in for some very big contracts, and it's all going to be coming from Middlesbrough, which is great.
Yeah, which is the whole point of the podcast is obviously the thriving thing. I believe we had a conversation the other week, and Teesside is now is it the most startups that's in the country per year or something like that? I think it is.
It's the highest rate. It's the highest rate of new startups within the first 12 months of operation than any other place in the north. I was going to say in the northeast in the country. Highest concentration of young entrepreneurs as well. So, if things can be put in place for this young talent, this young emerging talent, that are opening businesses and building businesses and growing businesses from embryonic size, then the future's bright. And I know the local authorities, combined authority, things like that, trying to put things in place to help this business growth. And where we had, and I used to be part of it many years ago, we had ICI Wilton employing 20,000 people, we had British Steel employing 20,000 people, etc. Those days are gone. And the jobs are coming from SMEs and people basically rolling the sleeves up, getting stuck in and doing it for themselves, which is fantastic.
It is, and I think we do have a really great culture in Teesside. We were just speaking yesterday about people who, businesses helping people with work experience and apprenticeships and helping people get into those jobs and develop roles within them. Going back to Xcel a little bit, obviously, when you used to work for Fox and then took a step away, you still do work, obviously, for Fox and ESPN and stuff like that.
We do. We still take on consultancies for them.
Yep.
I was out in Asia just towards the end of last year. We were trying to acquire a football property. They were trying to buy. This is Murdoch's a clever guy.
Yeah.
Love him or hate him, and in this part of the world, most people hate him.
Yeah, he's not too clever.
He's still a very clever guy, and Rupert and his sons, Lachlan in particular, and James, looked at the Fox empire and said, "Why isn't it growing?
Yeah.
Where's our growth coming from?" Because TV, what Fox tend to do is they provide a bouquet of TV channels. Mm-hmm. So they program these channels, they buy the programming for them, or in some cases they'll make their own programming for them through a raft of secondary companies that they also own. But they don't actually broadcast any of them themselves. They don't have a broadcast platform.
All right, okay.
So their business model is, we'll create all these channels, but people will pay us to have our channels.
Yeah.
And what was happening is the revenues for the channels, the carriage of these channels had plateaued.
Okay.
Advertising sponsorship revenues had plateaued.
Yep.
And the guys were scratching their heads in New York and going, where's growth?
Yeah.
Where is our growth?
Yeah.
And what they decided to do was look at acquiring sports properties. And they thought, if we own these sports properties, we control the properties, we can control where they are broadcast, who has them, who doesn't have them, and can control the financial aspects of them. So not just what revenue these sports properties like. An example, I keep saying sports properties. An example, we looked at Formula One.
Yep.
Before it was acquired by Liberty Media. So there was a lot of work going into what's its value, how can we grow it, where do we see the upside coming from Formula One? And we did that with a lot of properties. And there was a football property in Asia in particular last year. I was involved in a few years prior, just before I left Fox, trying to acquire it. Then it didn't happen. And then the door opened again for a second opportunity. So that, again, we get an email, we get phone calls, and suddenly it's we need some help on this. So Xcel drove the Fox attempt to acquire that football property, again. And the great thing about it is it comes out of an office from Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
And we're talking, and at that point, we're talking something like, I think it was about $400 million worth of property. That we were going to, this is the sort of money we were throwing on the table.
Yeah.
And another one, which still, I've got to be careful what I say, but there's another property that we're keeping an eye on, and negotiations haven't started yet, but the value of that's $1.2 billion US dollars. So it's a lot of money.
It is, yeah. It's a crazy amount when you start to think about it. I remember speaking to you at the time, obviously earlier, last year now actually, where you were doing quite a few flights in a very short period of time. So obviously the great thing about Xcel, and we've been lucky enough to come down to the studio and have a look around. If anybody ever has the chance to go see Dave's studio and his office, and I highly recommend it. It's an incredibly impressive setup with absolutely anything and everything you could ever want for video. For ourselves, if we need anything, then Dave's always our point of call. He's absolutely amazing. But obviously with Xcel and all the content and videos and stuff that you've produced, for Google and the stuff you produce for like the Borough Fan TV and everything like that, you have all the equipment here. So
just got to say one thing, Red Army TV, not Borough Fan TV.
Sorry, I must apologise for that. Sorry, Dave.
As much as we help each other, that's the other one.
Yeah, there is two of them. There is two
of course.
Obviously Red Army TV.
Yeah.
So when somebody obviously comes to you at the moment and says, "Hi, Dave, we need this corporate video, we need training videos, we're doing seminars, etc.," you have all the equipment already there in your own studio for every capability that you could ever want. So when these companies are obviously contacting you to do work in other countries and things like that, I imagine logistically it proves quite a few problems, to be honest. So is it a case of you literally box everything up and travel on, or you got supplies over there, or try and do a bit of both? Or
well, to give here's an example. Very small scale. We had a phone call from ESPN in America, and it's we have a chance to go and shoot a documentary, small-scale documentary in Finland.
Yeah.
And we need a local crew. Can you sort that out for us?
Yeah.
So Finland is one. It's very strange. As lovely as the people are and as lovely as the country is, there are not an awful lot of freelance videographers, and I don't like that word, cameramen, for broadcast.
Yeah.
So in that case, we were going to box the equipment up, and we were going to fly over it, and we were going to do it. So that's a very small-sized example of a job where we would box up and we would go. Yeah. But then at the very last minute, it was Valtteri Bottas who was going to be driving the Formula 1 driver, so that's the shoot we were going to do. Yeah. But then at the very last minute, we get a phone call to saying Mercedes really want this to happen, so much so they're going to provide their own camera crews.
All right, okay.
So then we just send the people across.
All right, so
now we have other situations. So we were involved a couple of years ago. There was a WBC World Boxing bout with Manny Pacquiao and Brandon Rios, and it took place in Macau, the Venetian Hotel in Macau. Now, we needed to provide live outside broadcast facilities there. Now, there is no way in the world I'm going to box up equipment from Middlesbrough, send it over to Macau. So that then is another arm that Xcel does. We have all around the world, all around the globe, and in some very strange places as well. We have contacts where we know who the people have got the right equipment and the people who can operate to a certain quality. Yeah. So in that case, we used a satellite uplink and an equipment provider from Hong Kong who ferried it across to Macau. Yep. But yes, we did travel out and have our own personnel on site. So there's another example of how it can work. We can take our own, we can use other people's, as long as we know the equipment's up to standard.
I think obviously for the clients that you have as well, it's an extra confidence that it gives them, because obviously there are companies out there who will say yes to any job whatsoever and then desperately try and get contractors together to be able to form, whether they've done work with them or not, and they kind of obviously, they just cross their fingers and hope that the work that they produce is of the standard. But with obviously Xcel, you already have those things and all the equipment here, where a lot of companies are looking for that equipment. Now, we've talked a couple of times as well, like you bring up there, the difference between videographers and cameramen. Obviously, for person-to-person marketing who produce this show, they do small video content and things like that, and the stuff that they do is absolutely fantastic. But it is very, very different to the kind of stuff that you can, I know, do that kind of thing, but you also do the higher end type stuff. So the being is, we were talking yesterday about some of the equipment and things you have, and you were just running us through, obviously, the broadcast cameras that you have are just completely different. So what is the kind of difference that you look for between a videographer and a cameraman? Is it the technical abilities that changes with the equipment, or is it just how things are done for TV is slightly different, or are the skills that move over? Or
the basic skills are the same. You're using a camera to capture something. Yeah. So the basic format of the job is the same. However, there'll be different uses. Yeah. And you can have a videographer. I would class somebody as a videographer who would put together more corporate work. Yeah. Where a cameraman, broadcast cameraman, is somebody who is shooting events for broadcast on television. Yeah. Now, the equipment's different. Yeah. And you get different cameramen within the broadcast sphere. So, prime example, one of the tenders we're currently shortlisted for is to film all the football leagues' football matches for the next 6 years.
Phenomenal.
Which is 1,800 games per season for 6 seasons, which is incredible. However, it's only a very special cameraman who can shoot live football.
Yeah, I imagine it's a very unique skill set that you need to be able to capture just live sport in general.
And some games are going to have 6 cameramen on. Some games are going to have 4 cameramen on. Some games are going to have 1 single cameraman on. Yep. So you've got to have a special... You've got to be able to... And we're probably going to be working with somewhere between 200 and 250 cameramen on a weekly basis. Yep. And we've got to make sure that those 200... If we're successful, we've got to make sure those 250 cameramen are broadcast cameramen. Yep. But broadcast cameraman who can shoot live sport. Yep. Because there's a big difference. Because they don't go for depth of field. No. They don't go for anything like that, which is more creative if you're producing more corporate work. Yep. But what they do is they need to understand what they're shooting and where the action could be off camera as well as following the action on camera. And be ready to react very, very quickly. They've got to have lightning reflexes, otherwise you miss something. Yeah. So it's a completely different beast. So, whole spectrum of whether you're a videographer, a cameraman, or even subsections of the two.
Like we were having a brief chat about it yesterday. It's something that we generally talk about with a lot of people, is that the scale now of equipment to be able to come, like, well, let's say we'll take videographers because there's more and more emerging on Teesside. You know, it's people have a passion for shooting video or photo or doing a bit of both, but the cost to entry, shall we say, is a lot lower, and it's coming lower all the time for you. Like, you know, some people can actually pick up iPhones, etc., and take video and stuff like this.
And we do use iPhone video on Red Army TV.
Red Army, and
which is broadcast on television.
What channel is it on again? It's on Virgin Sky.
It's the channel it's carried on is Made in Teesside.
Yep.
Which is a local digital channel, TV channel, which was launched a year ago. Yep. And that's available on Freeview. Yep. So you can get Freeview in a number of ways. You can get Freeview through the aerial. Yeah. So you plug it in the aerial and there it is on Channel 7. Yeah. As long as your aerial's pointing at Billsdale on the way to Helmsley and not pointing up to Geordieland because you'll get Made in Town and Weir. Yeah. You can also get Freeview on the BT platforms, Talk platforms, all that. So that's Freeview Channel 7. It's also available on Virgin Media, which is Channel 159, and we've got a full session of it just tonight that we've got to produce. 2 special programmes tonight, but you'll pick it up on a Friday night at 7:30 across Teesside, and you know it's the Borough Fans TV show. Yeah.
So obviously, like for those who, I know the 3 people in Teesside who don't know what Red Army TV is and how it's produced, the sheer wealth of content that you produce on a weekly basis, like, is absolutely astounding, really.
It is.
From a project that isn't monetized, you know, like, I know just, you know, from knowing each other, how much time you actually put into it. Like, we were just saying before, when we're recording this is the transfer deadline day. So you were going to 12 o'clock tonight.
Well, I should be there now.
Yeah.
I should have been there from 8 o'clock this morning because we're trying a few special things. So when I leave here, I'll go straight to the office. And we immediately start working on tonight's 7 o'clock show. Yep. So that's Red Army TV, the normal Red Army TV.
And that's every Wednesday.
That's every Wednesday we record it. It goes out live on Facebook Live. It then goes out on the Thursday on YouTube. And then it goes out on television on the Friday. But the programme is essentially the same. But the content we've already got. We had Tony Pulis' press conference after the football match that Borough played, Borough Sheffield Wednesday yesterday. Yep. We have Tony Pulis at a fans event the week before where he's addressing the fans and talking about what he wants to do and why he came to Middlesbrough. We have, we probably won't be showing an interview with Stuart Downing. We did that last week, but there's content still there. We can if we need it. We have got an interview with John Hickton, a former Borough player who was in the Red Army studio this week.
Oh, fantastic.
He was here at the weekend, so we talked to John, and that's going to be great to get John's views, and we asked him why he had such a long run-up for his penalty kick. We have one of the volunteers has recorded a report on the game from yesterday, so we'll show that. We have all the social media content to come in, all the news. We have guests coming in. We have the world #1 BDO darts player, Glenn Durrant, is a big Borough fan. Yep. He's in the studio again. He returns to the studio. He was in last year and actually created history on the programme. We stuck a dartboard up and he got 3 balls in one shot. And it's only the 4th time ever it's been videoed.
That was, you had that go out just on the Red Army TV channels yesterday, didn't you?
And just as a reminder.
The response again to it has been phenomenal. I've seen
all over the world. That video. We've had newspaper companies, we've had the World Darts people all contact us and say, can we use your video? Can you give us permission to use your video? So that last year that went viral around the world. So all that content for a half-hour show. And we haven't even started talking about 2 sets of games that has been played since last Wednesday's show. Looking forward to the next game, all that kind of stuff. So it's a phenomenal amount of content that we use for the show. And then there's even Borough fans who they've sent a video singing a song. They want the fans to start this new chant. So they record themselves on their iPhone or whatever it is. And they send that to us, so we include all that. So huge, it's huge, and that's why we need a team of volunteers, because 1 or 2 people just can't possibly produce all that content in what will be a few hours before we go into the studio and go live at 7.
Now, see, a lot of people who are familiar with Red Army TV and see the production quality that you actually have. Talk a little bit about the volunteers now that came be, because that was a program that doesn't get talked about very much, of how you did invest not only a lot of money but also your time in developing. How many volunteers is it now that you've got currently?
Currently we've got a hard core of about a dozen volunteers, but being volunteers they don't necessarily turn up every week.
Yeah, of course.
So we have to build a large talent pool. Across the 3 years we've been running, we've probably had something like 40 or 50 volunteers come through the door, and we're just looking for more now because we're going to develop Red Army. We've decided enough's enough. it's been, the response to it's been incredible. So we've now gone to 2 shows a week just in the last couple of weeks. We're going to expand that ideally to 7 shows a week. So Red Army's going to be on every single night of the week in one form or another. And we have a lot more plans in store other than just the TV shows as well. So we're going to grow it. So we need volunteers to come in. We're having a chat now with University of Teesside, who we've already got a relationship with, to encourage their media students to come in and get some real life experience. Because you mentioned the production value. The production we put into Red Army comes from real TV skill sets, which obviously I've been developing most of my career now with teams that I've managed. So the volunteers come in not knowing anything, and we're now able to. At first, it was just myself with a core, very tight, close-knit core, 4 or 5 people who I was developing. Now we're at a stage where those 4 or 5 people with myself can develop a lot more people. You don't need to know TV. We will teach you TV production.
But that is an incredible investment, of your own time to take of, like, let's say myself, who has, knowledge of obviously how video works, but when it comes to creatively shooting, etc., and then editing, I'm not that type of person. So to basically have that idea and sit there and go, right, we are now going to welcome with open arms the people of Teesside. And let's be honest, a lot of the people who come and work on it will be very diehard Borough fans, and they get access to things that no other person does. Like, you've done things from the ground, you've done things in the way day, like not even the good that Red Army does for stuff like within charities, and obviously we'll talk a little bit about that and the effect that you had on the recent things for the Hartlepool United, etc., because obviously within Teesside. So how did it go about you starting and going, right, we're just going to open the doors? And like, I imagine at the very early stages, that must have been hard to, take people who've got no kind of...
I'll take you back to me lying there in bed thinking it'd be a good idea to do this. I sat, I laid there on many mornings thinking, but if I do this, it's all going to fall on my shoulders. And I've got a business to run.
And a family, and you're a family man as well, too.
So it took me a couple of months before having that first thought to pressing the big green button and going. And it was difficult at first, but you get a few people who come in and they're interested. You get a lot of people who come in, they'll be around for 1 or 2 days and then they disappear. And it's not for them.
Well, it is work. It is hard work.
It is work. It is work because it's the one thing we can't do. This is produced in Xcel's office. So the one thing I can't do, I'm trying to run a business. I can't just have it as a playground and people coming in and doing a little bit or sitting around and using it as a social environment. There is a large social element to it because night to night. You mentioned the transfer deadline day. So we do our 7 till 7:30 show. So that'll be in the can. That'll be done and dusted by 8 o'clock. Probably a bit of post-production work to be done for the TV version because that has to be 11. Each segment, there are 2 halves. Each segment has to be 11 minutes to the frame, not to the second. So it's got to be 11 minutes to within 1/25th of a second. So there's a little bit more work done to that to make sure it's exactly as the TV companies need it, because computers play it out. If it's 1/25th of a second too long, the computer rejects it. So there'll be a little bit more work done on that. But then the pizzas will arrive. Then the beer will arrive. And then we'll have an hour and a half to prepare for what we're then going to do, which is the transfer deadline program. So that's 9 through until midnight. So we're going to be live, Facebook Live. And we will take through the 11 o'clock deadline of the transfer news. Then we'll have another hour after that to see if Middlesbrough have signed somebody, have released somebody, have loaned somebody, have taken somebody on loan. So there's got to be a social element to it. So that's why I'll be buying the pizzas, and that's why I'll be bringing the beer in and a few non-alcoholic drinks, of course, because there are people under the age of 18 who get involved. Large social side, but it is tough. You've got to come in because we can't afford, with just staffing volunteers and a small group of people having to do so much work, we can't, unless obviously we're developing people, we can't on a regular basis just have people swanning around and wandering up and down corridors.
You are producing something that is work at the end of the day. Obviously, it is giving people like a skill set for free that they would get nowhere else.
And massively different skill sets. What does a director do in TV? not a director of a company, but actually a TV director. What does a vision mixer do? We need cameramen, we need reporters, we need presenters. We're encouraging anybody who thinks they can present to come down and get in touch with us. And, we want to go 7 days a week, so we need presenters. But then there's, your video editors, there's your audio technicians, there's your cameraman in studio manager, floor manager, all this sort of stuff which doesn't happen in the real world. And the beauty of the Xcel perspective is we are the only television production company on Teesside. Yeah. A lot of video production companies. Oh yeah. A lot of filmmakers. Yeah. There's nobody around. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but we've not found another TV production company in Teesside. So you've got to ask the question: where else would people in this area get that skill set? And there are not many places. You can go to university. Middlesbrough College do video production. University does a lot of media and arts and that sort of stuff. But to get real hands-on experience, there's not many places. You've got to go to Newcastle or you've got to go to Leeds.
And there is a big difference there between, obviously, learning in a very safe environment and learning those skill sets, to producing something that has to go out and has to beat those targets and those deadlines that you previously discussed. That's a very different world and a different skill set that people get from doing it in an actual live, consequence-driven environment.
But there are paydays along the journey as well for the volunteers, because Xcel has required and still requires people to do paid work. Yeah. And if we can develop a talent pool on Teesside of people who can be cameramen, people who can produce, people who can direct, people who can video edit, then Xcel itself will pull in work where those skill sets are needed. And a prime example is we're about to go to Asia for a 6-race motor racing series starting in April. And I'm taking one of the volunteers with me in a paid capacity to come and work.
Well, that's a dream job for people who when they started, they would have had any thought, they would have no thought if you'd have come to them at that time and said, oh, by the way, in X amount of time, you're going to be flown out there to film this. They wouldn't have even thought that was possible in the wildest dreams. So,
and another knock-on one came last year, and it'll be repeated in a few months' time, is North Riding County Football Association. If you're south of the River Tees, it looks after all the grassroots football in the area. It's Durham FA, north of the Tees. But what we did for North Riding last year is their most important football competition is the North Riding County FA Senior Cup. Yep. And that's the one that Middlesbrough puts its under-23s in. York City, obviously when it was a professional club, would enter. Scarborough, when it was a professional club, would enter. So you'd always ultimately end up with the bigger clubs in the area, whether they be Middlesbrough, York, Scarborough as it was, Gisborough Town, Mask United, all these clubs would get through to the final. Well, last year, the final was held at the Riverside. And it wasn't the bigger clubs. Middlesbrough got knocked out in the semi-finals, so we ended up with Whitby Town in the final. And they were playing Pickering Town, and North Riding wanted the game streaming live. So the Borough fan volunteers who were working on Red Army, it's like, guys, do you want to go and do some real outside broadcasts from the Riverside at a football match? Yeah, they loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah. So we had cameramen on the gantry. We had commentators on the gantry. We had guys who were in charge of streaming it, doing the graphics, all that kind of thing, in a real football match situation at the football stadium that they all love. So no real monetary reward there, but huge reward from their passion perspective.
Especially, taking pride in the work and things like that. But, Red Army is, for want of a better word, a force for good in Teesside. I know it's not something that you would actively promote, but I'm going to make you, is the good that Red Army does. We mentioned it briefly there, but I do want to come back to it because it is important. While Red Army is aimed at the borough and obviously Middlesbrough and doing good within there, and you have done fantastic work with charities that are in the local area, but you took on your own shoulders and Red Army's shoulders a massive part in the troubles that Hartlepool are going through at the moment, and that is obviously like to point to Teesside. So obviously for the people who've got who will be listening in Hartlepool, who will be Hartlepool fans as well as Borough fans, what kind of stuff did you do to support them? Because I didn't realise until we were talking to them that Hartlepool actually supported Borough quite a bit back in the day. You know, and you wanted, there was a story there. So
the borough almost went out of business in 1986. They went into administration. I think they were the last football club to go into administration before the football regulations changed, where you then receive points deductions and punishment for going into administration. I think the borough were the last, or if they weren't the last, they were second from last. It was as close as that. And what happened with the borough is, while all the work was going on behind the scenes to try and save the club, the Football League basically said, hang on a minute, the season starts this weekend.
Yep.
And if you don't fulfil this first fixture, we were playing Port Vale, first game of the season, I'm sorry, guys, you're out.
Yeah.
And the borough didn't have access to its own ground because it was still in the hands of the administrator up until basically the Friday, the night before the game. So it was in no condition to host the game.
No.
So Hartlepool came and said, we've got a home game at 3:00, but if it helps, come and play your game immediately after we finish ours. And that's what happened. So the borough started that season at Victoria Ground, as it was called then. And without Hartlepool's help, Middlesbrough wouldn't be here today because it had been kicked out of the Football League.
Yeah.
So we all know of Hartlepool's plight. They needed £200,000 by the end of this month. We're there now to keep operating. The debts, I've seen various numbers banded about 1.5 million, 2 million. So the club is still struggling and it's still trying to find somebody to come in and help them. But a Borough fan just put out on social media, can't we help them?
Yeah.
They helped us, can't we help them? So we just came up with the idea. We used Red Army and we just went out there and said, look, if we can because we take a Red Army themed coach to all Middlesbrough's away games.
Yep.
And we just said, right, if we can put some coaches on, Borough fans, do you want to go to the game?
Yeah.
And the response was fantastic. It was tremendous. We had 2 local coach companies contact us and say, we'll give you a coach for free.
Yeah.
So suddenly we had a couple of coaches for free.
Yep.
And we had loads of fans saying, yeah, I want to come. How do we book me a place on? And then suddenly Hartlepool became a sellout. And half the fans just less than half the fans in Victoria Park in their game recently against Wrexham were Borough fans.
Yep.
So the Borough fans repaid their thank you from 31 years ago by attending the game, buying the tickets, selling the game out to give them some much needed revenue. So it was good to see Red Army was used as a bit of a generator for that sort of work. And it was good to see. I was there.
Yep.
Didn't go to QBR that day. I went to Hartlepool instead.
Yep.
Football wasn't great, I've got to be honest. But just to be able to be there and help Hartlepool was, I think, is the one thing that the Borough fans who turned out on the day will be able to take back with them.
Well, I think it's a sentiment that's all the way through Teesside. The people of Teesside are renowned for banding together and helping causes. When a good cause, it's kind of like a torch paper catching fire, isn't it? You see it all the time. Great causes that happen within the area. Talk about the area a little bit. So, what do you personally think of the culture within business in Teesside? Obviously, we won't go any further than that remit, but is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Do you think
it's a good thing? It's a good thing. I think we undersell ourselves massively.
Oh.
As not just Middlesbrough, which is my hometown, but the whole of Teesside. I think there's almost an embarrassment to go out there and start shouting and singing from the rooftops. I truly believe we're not going to be getting any significant help from central government. I think London, Parliament, wherever you want to point the finger, they're looking at an entire UK at the moment, which is about to leave the EU, which is constantly having this threat of Scotland breaking away. So I don't think their focus on a particular region is going to be too strong at the moment. So if we're going to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and make this area a success, we've got to roll our sleeves up and we've got to do it ourselves. We've got to work hard and we've got to shout and sing and say, this is what's good about this area. And it's good to see there are 1 or 2 people, and I'm involved in a couple of pretty key projects where we're trying to bring in investment, create jobs. We're trying to turn the Tees into the wind farm service centre for the entire North Sea. That's one of the projects I'm working on. And a lot of people you talk to outside the area going, where are you exactly?
Yeah.
So if we don't sing our praises, nobody else will. And it's good to see that there are people out there who do. A lot of business is inward focused. Yeah. I think where the key and the success could be for the regeneration of I'm going to use the term loosely, industry. That could be clean manufacturing. That could be innovation. It doesn't have to be heavy industry. I think that lies with us being able to say this is a great place. Come and invest. Come and live. Bring your money and bring your jobs.
Yeah. One of the things that Teesside, I think, is getting better and better known for is obviously space within the tech community. So we do have companies, that like yourselves, we have Double 11, we have various other that are on the forefront of tech. With the helpful there is that Teesside University and Middlesbrough College, etc., and the other institutions on Teesside are placing a good way in getting people to think forwardly, and
I was with a group of people from Teesside University yesterday evening, and we were discussing what the university's doing, what it's capable of, what its graduates can do, what its professors can do. It's a fantastic resource. It really is. I used to remember it as Teesside Polytechnic because that's where I went when I was an electrician for ICI Wilton. I studied my HNC in electrical engineering with them, but it's come on massively since then.
Oh yeah.
And some of the innovation that comes out of Teesside University is fantastic. The resources they've got that you can call upon, local businesses can call upon, and that's what the university is doing now. It's making these resources available to local companies. So that's a fantastic resource. But one area that is flying massively here is creative and digital. Teesside is very quickly making a name for itself. My only fear is there are so many moving parts, individual moving parts, and there are so many blinkers being worn.
Yeah.
We need somehow to corral everybody and all that talent and say, right, let's try and work together. Let's somehow create Teesside as the one area of digital creative industry, rather than we have 150 separate desperate parts and we're all fighting each other.
Yeah, for the same bits.
We should try and build almost a community there that encourages. The key for this area to succeed is inward investment, is attracting investment onto Teesside, not trying to carve up what's already there. And that's what we've got to do.
It's how we go about it, though. Like, obviously, I was speaking to somebody the other day who's a developer, and he says that obviously Teesside is now currently getting a lot of interest from developers from London. Obviously, house pricing, property pricing, etc. is a lot lower than there, so they're looking to invest in the area in that way. But obviously, they're looking to invest in it from... That'll bring jobs, to convert these properties, etc. But it's like business being able to attract investment that'll help the entirety of Teesside. And I do really agree with you that a lot of people are fighting over like the bits because we are thinking inwardly and not outwardly. At the end of the day, I'll use marketing as an example, obviously, because we have, obviously we're in that industry, but a lot of marketing companies do a bit of everything. I'm sure, like in your line of work, you get asked for, a bit of everything. Do you know, like, do you do websites? Do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do photography, etc.? And it's great that, there is always that temptation to say, oh, yes, we'll do that and we'll figure it out later. And I think that a lot of companies end up doing that in Teesside, but they shouldn't be. They should be specialists in, a great company that we're going to have on the podcast, and somebody that obviously we both know is Marble Media, who you've done work for Marble Media.
Yeah, we have. We did when Microsoft came to town. Yeah, one of their sessions, we filmed that for them and turned the material around.
It's for anyone who doesn't know Marble Media, they do pay-per-click Google advertisement and Bing advertising and things like that. And I believe they're one of the very few Premier partners that are in the UK. I think there's only a handful of them.
I think there are 6.
Yeah.
There are only 6 Premier partners.
But if you think that, like, in marketing companies who do pay-per-click advertising, there's probably thousands in the UK. So it's say that, that Google have selected them, and they do regular Google events and trading events, and they're well known as well for putting back into the local area. They do a lot of trading events and talks and things like that. So it's one of those. But I think they are obviously in the same building as you, which is the Boho buildings. There seem to be a very like. How long have the Boho buildings been there now? I want to say 4 years.
Well, the Boho buildings, there are 7 of them at the moment. The one we're in, which is Boho 5, has probably been up for about 2.5, 3 years.
So they were obviously commissioned and built, and you can't get into some of these buildings unless you have a tech-based...
Correct. Yeah. It's got to be creative or digital.
Yeah, creative or digital. So that seemed like there was a big spur at the beginning, but now it seemed to have died off a little bit, Do you think that's just because no one's picked it up and continued running with it, or do you think that it's basically because they're trying to run it as a business at the end of the day?
There are reasons for specific buildings, but not all are council-owned. So there's some private buildings which have adopted the Boho numbering system. But Boho 5 and Boho 1, 5 is where I am. The mothership is Boho 1, was managed by... a company that was a partnership between Middlesbrough Council and Teesside University called Digital City. Yep. And that had problems, and there's been restructuring done. So that's probably part of the reason why it's all just been sorted out in the last couple of months. And there's been staff changes, and I think that's why probably that side of the boho infrastructure hasn't flown.
Yeah.
But we are seeing more companies come in now. We're seeing, as we mentioned earlier, students who've come through Teesside University and then set up in embryonic facilities and are now growing. We're seeing or hearing of them moving into the boho area.
Taking that next step.
Which allows more ex-students to then come and do their bit. So there's a supply chain, if you like, from a small company perspective. So I think you're probably going to see that development, that building of the creatives and the digital sector probably expand over the next couple of years, because we are now seeing movement come through that chain.
And there is a lot more and more, like, obviously happening on Teesside. As somebody who's been in the creative industry for a long time, there's going to be a lot of people listening who, are in the creative industry, even whether they realise that they're creative or not. What advice would you give for people who are starting out in the current climate? Obviously,
do what I didn't do. No, I would seriously, if you're starting out, go and talk to Business Compass, people like that, and see what funding might be available to help you. Because I'm very old-fashioned. I come from Priestfields. I'm a guy who grew up on a social local authority council estate. So my idea is get off your backside and get things going. And so I've never been one to tap into help that's there. It's like, I'm going to do this myself with my own money. And that's tough. If there is help out there, go and look for it. So talk to these people. There's a lot of, particularly since the closure of SSI, the steelworks, there were things put in place. There was help put in place for small businesses in the area, and there are pots of cash there. It doesn't have to be monetary help. It could be all kinds of help. But go and look for it. Go and ask for it. And see what assistance there is out there, because every little bit helps. And if you can get some particular aspect of your business that you're wanting to run funded, part funded, whatever, then it's going to make it that little bit easier for you. So if you are just starting out, cast your eye across the horizon and see what helps out there, because there's a lot of help in the Teesside area. Yeah,
and it's something, if you go, up the road or down the road to Leeds and Newcastle and things like that, they do have a culture within their startups of, venture capital, angel investing and things like that. But for some strange reason, we don't have in Teesside. There seems to be, for startups in other cities, like a culture of investors wanting to basically give, and especially in tech and creative and things like that. A lot of companies are started out with seed money, but that doesn't seem to be the case in Teesside for some strange reason. I think it's a lot of people are just exactly what you said, is that the opportunities that they want aren't there. So I think, well, I'm going to make it for myself, but that's obviously quite hard to do.
It is. It depends what level you want to make it to. Do you want to make it to an aspect that you can pay yourself a comfortable salary? Do you want to make it to the point where you want to employ staff, create jobs for the area?
Yeah.
Do you want to make it and have a huge company? There are different levels of expectation or aspiration, and it depends on the individual what they would consider make it as.
Yeah. I think that's quite an important thing to bring up, especially for a lot of people who are listening and doing startups, because a lot of people just think that when they start business, that the end goal should be to become as big as humanly possible. You want to be Facebook, Microsoft, whatever you want to be, this massive conglomerate. But that might make more people miserable than it does actually happy. Where do you actually want that? Or do you just want to be able to work and, pay your mortgage, have enough for a few beers on a Friday night, feed your kids, everybody's happy, money for Christmas? Or do you want something a little bit bigger? Like, actually, what do you want? And let's be honest, the skill sets required to run a large company are very different from even like SMEs and things like that. Not everybody should be doing that. But I'm talking about now, but I have no idea how you would answer that question for yourself. You have to be incredibly self-aware.
Yeah, I think you need to be aware of scale creates its own problems.
Yeah.
And you've got to be aware of that. By all means, set yourself up. Because probably what your short-term goals are. You might be slightly hazy on your medium-term goals, and you might not have a clue what your long-term goals are.
Yeah.
But then you might. Everyone's different. But when you scale up, it causes more problems, staffing problems.
Yep.
We've gone through that with Xcel. We've had members of staff who we've had to let go.
Yeah.
Because they were just not right. They were affecting negatively or impacting negatively on the business, and suddenly you're talking a human relations aspect that if you're working on your own, you don't have to face.
Yeah.
Then if you're growing and you need financial help, you've got to start looking at, well, how do I put business plans together?
Yeah.
You know, how do you approach a bank and say, I need £1 million off you?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so there's all little hurdles along the way and a lot of learning along the way. So the only advice can be, first and foremost, set your goals. I've always operated with short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And when you achieve that short-term goal, it brings the medium-term goal that little bit closer. You might have to refocus and reset your short-term goals there.
Yeah.
Because you've achieved A, but you can't get to B without doing C first.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They are flexible. They do move.
Yeah.
But if you know where you want to be, if you know what that end goal is, you've got a better chance of getting there than not having that focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and evaluating those goals along the way. One of the things that you brought up there with obviously was HR, a conversation that I was having with a friend the other day, is that when you own your own business, you sometimes lend yourself to doing everything. You want to do your own accounts, you want to do your own paperwork, you want to do sales, which you have to do at the beginning.
I've gone from being vice president of Fox.
Yeah.
With my immediate department was 108 staff.
Yeah.
Having to restructure an operation of 550 people, which wasn't very nice. It was all organisational change. There was a buyout. So the operation was taken over and I had to restructure that. So I've gone from that higher level, board level operation to coming back to Xcel, and the first thing I was having to do is look at invoices.
Yeah.
Chase up debt.
Yeah.
Employ staff. Recruit apprentices.
Yeah.
And who's doing all that? Yours truly.
Yeah.
So it's a massive change, and if you're going to run your own operation, suddenly you become a bit of an expert at how small businesses run.
Yeah, and those cases. But then obviously it gets to the point where business become more medium size, and then it goes, we'll hire now. But I think a lot of businesses run into a problem where they all of a sudden the people that they hire, they're quite shocked that those people don't care about their business as much as what they do. Yeah. Which will never ever be the case because it's their business.
Yeah.
I think that, especially for a lot of startups in Teesside, they will come into that. Hiring is, much better than myself, is one of the hardest things to do in business and get good people. And, we've both been lucky that we do have great people. But it's, how would you, if for business in Teesside who were just about to take that leap and bring on their first business, whether it's to help them with, part-time admin work or to be a member of the team or a like a lot of businesses go for sales first because obviously cash flows, oxygen for a lot of people. What kind of advice would you have in, your entire career of looking for the right people for that business?
Look at yourself first.
Yeah.
You could bring in the best individuals possible, but if you're impossible to work with yourself, how long are they going to last?
Yeah.
So you got to look at yourself first, and see if you're a leader or a manager. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Can you lead people? Which is where you get buy-in.
Yeah.
You're talking about people won't treat your business like you cherish it. Yeah. Well, they might just do if they buy into the person who's leading them.
Yeah.
So leadership skills are key rather than just be a manager, because anybody can manage anything.
Yeah.
Well or badly.
Yeah.
So once you've looked at yourself, then look for almost come up with the ideal candidate. What skill sets are absolutely essential? What personal skills are absolutely essential for the role? So then you can come up, and it's very, very much how a lot of big companies now will hire. So there's your essentials. What are your desirables? And then go and look for people and talk to them, meet them. Chat with them, spend time with them, rather than just, there's a CV, I'll throw that one in the bin, unless absolutely, certainly somebody's not suitable and you can tell they're not suitable.
Yeah.
The human touch is massive.
It is, yeah.
If you can give somebody the human touch, they're more likely to put a good shift in for you and treat your business well. Yeah,
but I think, again, that comes down to being a good leader. But for going back to keeping that within the creative sphere, you can have, say, the best creative in the world. There might be the best designer, the best videographer, the best photographer. They might be able to produce work that is an unbelievable standard, but that doesn't mean that they're going to lead themselves towards leadership. And I think all business owners, you start a business within your area of expertise, but being a good leader and even, a good solid manager is a skill set all of its own. God knows how many books and things have been wrote over it over the years.
But there is help you can get. We talked Teesside University earlier. Now, they have accredited courses and non-accredited courses. I was just talking about it yesterday. One of the courses they have it's unaccredited, but it's Leading for Growth.
Yeah.
And that's for people in SMEs who want to get more hands-on experience of leadership skills.
Yeah.
And there is one for managing, which falls underneath leading for growth. So if there's somebody it's not their business, but it's somebody senior to you in an SME, they can go and get this hands-on skills and knowledge. So there are resources on Teesside that can help your business do that.
Yeah. Again, I suppose it comes back to creating that culture inwardly. You know what we're talking about. There's a guy that we both know called Anth Quinn, who deals with that. I would love to have him on. I've never actually had a detailed conversation with him, but I would love to have him on. Obviously, that's what he does, creates like employee culture within it. And I think it's a good thing that we do have in Teesside, and, you know, people do become like good, solid little teams and do business with each other and things like that. So do you have any other tips that you would give to people? What would you consider? Is there anything that you would say, right, you know, this is a bit of a waste of money, this is a nice to have, like even from a, you know, video work, you know, something like
I'd rather go from a managing the team perspective, which is honesty.
Yeah.
Honesty. I was put in a horrible position when I was with Fox. The company was bought out. It was a joint venture. One of the partners bought the other one out. So suddenly the whole of the culture of the operation was going to change, and the whole structure of the organisation was going to change. So it was to take a team of 550 people down to 200 people.
It's a horrendous job.
It's horrible, and I was landed this organisation change on my desk, and I was told how it was expected to happen, which I've got to be honest, I tore the pieces of paper up and threw them in the bin and did it my own way. And the way I did it was honesty. So you sit down with people and say, this is what the reality is. This is what's going to happen. Talk to me.
Yeah.
And I was amazed at the people I thought would stay or wanted to stay as opposed to the people who eventually wanted to stay.
Yeah.
Because those people you would automatically put on your list of must keeps.
Yeah.
A lot of them would come to me and say, actually, I want to change. I've been here 12 years. I want to change.
Yeah.
And I'd rather take the golden handshake and do something else.
Yeah.
So by being open and honest with them and saying, this is it.
Yeah. Let's
work together and do it as best as we can. I didn't have to force one person out.
That's incredible, really, when you think about it. You know, 50% of the workforce. Like, my initial thought there is obviously having to let that level of people go or tell them that they're going to face.
Well, a lot of people didn't like. It worked across an 11-month notice period.
Yeah.
A lot of people didn't like that instability of not knowing.
Yeah.
What was going to happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of people came and said, I found myself another job.
Yeah.
Found myself another job. So immediately that amount of people you have to deal with was shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Yeah.
Then other people were coming and saying, I don't want to stay.
Yeah.
I want to go and do something else.
Yeah.
So again, your list shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until we got to a point where it almost balanced out to the person. You realise and you talk to people. One person who, this was the really difficult one, one person who I didn't have on a list of people I wanted to keep came to me and said, I can't afford to lose this job. Just had a second baby.
Yeah, and you know, there's people who in Teesside have gone through that or going through that. Look at all the thing with Carillion currently.
But by him coming to me and saying that, the end result was we were able to find a way for him to keep his job.
Which is phenomenal, isn't it, really? You know.
Whereas if we'd have just gone, right, who do I want to keep? Who are the 200 on my list that I'm going to keep? Everybody else gets a letter. Then he wouldn't have remained.
Yeah.
So be honest. That's the tip. I mean, we're talking a large organisational change situation there. But day to day in business, SMEs, if your manager's honest with you, as long as you can take honest criticism, then what have you got to worry about?
I think there's speaking there of like jobs and being happy within it, I think there's probably there's probably quite a few people who are listening who currently work for somebody else, who are in a regular job, who may be thinking about taking that step and becoming self-employed in Teesside, and quitting and leaving and just doing it all themselves, which is a daunting step, Like, I remember going to do it for the first time, and I wouldn't have done it without my wife. My wife basically told me if I didn't do it, she would, she was sick of me, in her infinite wisdom. But what advice would you give to people who are thinking about starting their own business in Teesside? Would you think go for it?
I would I'd hate to give direct advice.
Yeah, I know you couldn't give
everybody's situations are different
completely. And
now, what are your responsibilities?
Yeah.
See, I came to this crossroads in life. A couple of times in life, you'll come to a crossroads in your career. Mine was 1990. No, it wasn't. 1989. I was working at ICI. I'd made my way up to being an experimental physicist.
That sounds like
Wilton.
a fantastic job.
I just used to put 100,000 volts through plastic and blow holes in it. It was fantastic. But I didn't get on at all with my manager. Yeah. And my manager was making my working life a bit of a misery. So I was unhappy there. And I wanted to get into the media world. I wanted to get into radio. And I'd been working as a volunteer in radio for a while. So this all came to a head, and it came to a crossroads. Yeah. And that was my opportunity to say, I'm going to go and do this. But I didn't have a young family. Yeah. I was, barring the girlfriend at the time, I was effectively looking after myself. Yeah. So that was a simpler decision to make than somebody who may be listening to this and thinking, hang on a minute, I've got 2 kids, the wife, a mortgage. Yeah. So every situation is personal and is different. Yeah. So all I can say is, look at what you've got currently. Yeah. Are you happy with what you've got? Yeah. If you're unhappy, can you change what you currently have? Not change direction, change job. Is there any way your current situation can be tweaked or changed to make you happy? But if at the end of the day you have this real desire to go and do something, do your homework. Yeah. I wanted to be a radio presenter, but I didn't get to present on the radio for another 6 years after that.
Did you, when you left ICI, did you have a job waiting for you in radio? Or
nope.
You just left and said, just going to do this?
Gave up. Went in one day, said, I've had enough. That's it. There's my notice. I'm leaving. Signed up for a local journalism course at what was Darlington College then. Yep. Still is, but they've moved. Yep. It was Darlington College of Technology in those days. And suddenly my journey into media and the radio had begun. Yeah. And I'd left engineering behind.
It's a bit of a, not many people think engineers and, experimental physicists would be, go down that, they're very different from creative and that type of, analytical, critical thinking, so it's a...
Well, you see, there's your short, medium, and long-term goal. My long-term goal was to be a TV presenter. Yeah. The medium-term goal was to be a radio presenter. The short-term goal was to get into the industry. Yeah. And the route I analysed, and the best route for me to get into there was to become a journalist. Yeah. Take the journalism course, because that opened more doors within the industry. Mm-hmm. So short-term goal achieved. Get rid of ICI, as I did. Get onto a course. By the February, even though the course started in September, by the February I was already working as a freelance at TFM in the newsroom, doing sport. That's where my love of sport and radio was born. So then short term was achieved, medium term became achieved when I was presenting radio shows, and obviously I was doing the borough commentaries on Century and sports editor at Century Radio, and then that just naturally then progressed and led to the long term aim. The biggest problem for me over that journey came in 2010 when I'm sitting in ESPN in the Sports Centre studio, having just presented Sports Centre for the umpteenth time, which is the biggest sports news evening flagship show in the world. Yeah, yeah. And I thought, what do I do now? Yeah, I'd achieved that long-term aim, and I didn't then have another goal set after that. So it's a long way of saying to people, if you know what you want, have a look first to see how you can get there, and is it achievable? Because the last thing you want to do, by all means, follow your dreams, and I encourage everybody to follow your dreams. But if throwing the baby out with the bathwater is the only way you're going to get there, it might be a bit of a rocky road. Yeah, yeah. And, obviously, we would never advocate making those decisions without talking to wives and spouses. Oh, absolutely. And, take professional advice as well. Exactly. There is a lot of romantic advice out there saying just do it, and all that kind of thing. But we do live in which is what I did. Yeah, yeah. And thankfully, I didn't have any responsibilities than other to myself at the time. So if it went wrong, it was. I had a job of then I could pick up the pieces because there were small pieces. Yeah, now obviously things are a bit different. You mentioned they're obviously doing freelance work and things like that. Obviously, within the creative industries, there's a lot of thought, and some people believe that you should do some work for free, able to get exposure that'll lead to opportunities of doing work. However, there's a lot of people that I've seen recently on discussions online and things like that who say that nobody should do work for free, regardless of what quality that you're doing. You should be paid for what you do. I personally think you will get paid for what you're worth.
I think that a lot of people, when you very start out, should prove that you should, if you haven't produced anything, what says that you were worth anything? So obviously there is a bit of give and take there. But do you have, within the creative industry, what are your thoughts on people, producing things for companies for free to hope to open doors? Because
I did.
Yeah, well, I did. I think that there's a lot to be said as well, for the doors that you open and the connections that you make is... A lot of people, I always joke that I leave lots and lots of money on the table because I don't play golf. How much business is done on a golf course, know just as well as me.
Well, I'm as guilty as that because I'll network to a certain extent. Yeah. But to me, it's a false environment. It's people networking for the sake of getting contacts and all that sort of stuff. You've got to do it to be in business to a certain extent. But I don't sign up to social cliques just for the sake of being somebody's friend or getting in there.
Yeah.
And I've suffered because of that, because I wouldn't go to social events on an evening with this bunch of people I wanted to be on the inside with. It's like I'd rather be at home with my family.
I know.
And I've suffered because there were deals done and I wasn't part of it. But... I think we both know Recognition PR in Darlington, Graham Robb, the senior partner there. Graham used to be a radio presenter, and that's how I got started in radio. I phoned him up one day and just said, I want to volunteer. I want to build a career in radio. Can you help me? So I went in and answered telephones on Mad After Midnight, which he won't thank me for reminding him of. That then progressed to answering phones as a volunteer on the sports show.
Yep.
But what it did, it was Radio Tees at the time, what it did, it allowed me to become known to the people within Radio Tees, stroke TFM as it became. So within 12, 18 months, yes, I was a volunteer on this show and I was a volunteer on this show, but then opportunities came from that. And I'm seeing a very similar picture with what we do with Red Army. Yeah. People come in, they're volunteering for their own end, which is to be involved in a TV show for Borough fans. Yep. But now work is coming for the volunteers who've developed and are of a certain standard now with their skill sets. So there's paid work coming.
Yeah, so that's phenomenal.
So I could never say, no, you should be paid for every second that you work or otherwise. I think you put yourself in the frame by volunteering, by showing up, by showing commitment, by getting work experience. Because when the next employer is sitting there and he's looking at a couple of CVs, maybe he wants to take an apprentice on, you look at, as I'm doing, we're taking another apprentice on at the moment, and I'm looking at CVs, and there's this one who plays games in their bedroom on an evening, but there's this one who's done this work experience, that work experience, and the other, you think, which one do I feel will fit with the work environment better?
And it does pay off. Obviously, you were just talking previously of somebody that you are taking abroad purely because they did, spec work, for free. So if people are interested in having any kind of video work done whatsoever, from stuff that obviously you want for social media all the way through to seminars being recorded, dinner evenings, award ceremonies, all the other stuff that we've covered today, where's the best place for them to find you?
Probably the website, but that's getting revamped at the moment. So it's an old website that hasn't been updated for a few years until the new one comes on. But yeah, xcelworld.com is the domain. So Xcel is Xcel, because many people spell it many different ways because of spreadsheets and Microsoft. So Xcelworld, all one word, .com.
Yeah, and obviously all that will be linked in our description to things so they can come straight to you.
If it's easier, people can contact us through Red Army TV as well. So that's redarmy.tv.
Okay. And is that the best place for, obviously, to get all the content for Red Army?
Yep. I mean, it goes on many platforms, but the TV show always goes up on Red Army on the website, so redarmy.tv. And on there, you'll pick up your social media links as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming in, Dave.
You're welcome, Mike.
Okay, so that was episode 1 of the Teesside Business Podcast, promoted and produced by Person to Person Marketing. Stay tuned on our social media channels for our next episodes. Thank you very much for listening.